Okay, guys, in this question, we are going to analyze what we call discrete data. Now, discrete data are counts. So these are numbers, so the data is quantitative, and it starts with the words number of. So anytime you see that number of, that means it's going to be discrete because these are counts. So here we see number of pets. Okay, now, I hope you're not going to actually manually count and fill out the table by like going through this thing and saying, oh, well, let's see, there's a zero right here, zero right here. If you do that, at least learn how to sort the data first. So let's go ahead and do that. We are going to click on the little page on the top right. So this is where we go right here. And then once we click on that, we are going to also click on the first option here, which is the sidebar. Okay, so let's open that up. So now we have Desmos. Now I want to move it. So let me move it. And then on the bottom right, I can actually extend the window so it's larger. All right, so what I want to do is copy paste this data into Desmos. The first thing I need to do is to define a list. This time it's not frequencies yet because we actually have raw data, so we don't have it summarized. We do not know how many zeros happened, how many ones happened. So we have to save it into a list, and I'll just call it L. That's what Desmos usually uses in the help file, so I'll just go with that. So it's going to be L for list. So I'll say L equal, and then I will just highlight the whole thing. So just make sure that you're highlighting the data. Now, at this point, you're gonna have to copy paste it. If you are on a Windows computer, then press Control C and then press over here. So first Control C and then click here, Control V. Okay, that pastes the data into Desmos. If you on a Mac, anytime I say Control, you're gonna actually press Command. So it's gonna be Command C, Command V. Okay, so I pasted the data. It told me that there are 25 numbers in data. Okay, great. So the first thing I will say is that the data is discrete again because it's counts and it starts with number of. So you can see right here that it says number of pets. So immediately when you see that, you know that this is going to be discrete. Okay. All right. So let's click on this button again to hide the data, right? So we can just click to open, click to hide. And if you have discrete data, then an appropriate display would be a histogram. Okay, so how do you sort the data? So there is a command that's very simple to remember, and that is just sort. Okay, and then you open parentheses and put L. That sorts the data for you. So if I click on the 25 element list, I can actually manually count, and it's not that hard to do, how many zeros happened. So after I sort it, I can see that there are 6 zeros. Okay, open it up. There are a lot of ones, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Looks like it's 12. There are 4 twos, 2 threes, and only 1 4. Now, how can I check that? There is another command, and we are going to actually use it to graphically display our data, and it's called histogram. So I'm just going to say histogram, open parentheses, and then L. Now, here is the problem. When you do that, it's hard to actually see the whole thing. So you will need to do something called zoom fit. So if you were to position your mouse over this right here, this is called zoom fit. And I'm not sure why Desmos by default just doesn't do that. So let's just go ahead and click on that. And we can actually read the height of each bar, right? So we can see that this one is 6, that one is 12, this one is 4, 2, and 1. So I already know that what my answers here are correct because I checked it using 2 different methods. The next step is to find the relative frequency. So how do I do that? Well, that's the same thing. We were picking up where we left off last time, which means that you have to define f, which is a list of frequencies. Okay, so you're gonna type that, and you are gonna have to type that because you just got it. And then we're gonna repeat what we did before, which is we're gonna say round f divided by total f, and then after the fraction a comma and 3. Now, in this case, actually, I did not have to round because these are exact values because I had 25, which is a nice number, but you might have to. So I don't know if you need to or not. So I'm just including the round just in case. Okay. All right. By the way, if you were to add relative frequencies, the answer should be 1. And if it's not 1, that means that it's probably a mistake. So relative frequencies should add up to 1. Sometimes they add up to 0.99, sometimes to 1.01, and that's because of rounding. But generally speaking, is if it's because of rounding, if it's close to 1, like 0.99, okay. But if it's like 0.47, you know that you did not get the relative frequencies correct. Okay, next question says, what proportion? So again, pay attention to the word proportion because it's not the same thing as percentage. Proportion and relative frequency is basically the same thing. And we have here our first glimpse of the at least versus at most. You're going to see this a lot in the course. So make sure you make a note of that. You might want to put it on your note card that you are allowed to use on a test. At least 2 means 2 or more. Whereas over here, when you see at most 2, this means 2 or less. So it is not the same thing. And notice how 2 itself is included. You can see that it's included in both at least and at most. But with at least you start with 2, you go higher. With at most is 2 or lower. So what that means is that you're going to add relative frequencies corresponding to, if it's at least 2, corresponding to 2, 3, and 4. So let's go ahead and do that. And that gives me 0.28. I do not have to convert it to a percentage because it says proportion. The next question says, what percentage of students had at most 2 pets? So at most is 2 or less. So that would be 2 itself. It's a very common mistake that people don't include the 2 itself. And less. So also 1 and also 0. And that I do have to multiply by 100 to convert that to a percentage. So 88% had at most 2 pets. Okay, now as far as the histogram goes, all I have to do is just look at my picture and make sure the heights of each bar match. So the first one should be 6, then 12, then 4, then 2, and 1. I'm going to see if I can move this because it's kind of hard to see over here, but at least you can see the lines, right? So you can tell that this is like 2, 4, 6, right? But it's a little bit confusing. Anyway, I think it's just the first one. These other ones I don't think are correct. Let's see, like this one doesn't match, right? Because we had like a 2 and a 1. Yeah, this looks like a 2 and a 1, but here the top is a 10, not 12. So anyway, so you can just go through that and make sure that you selected the right one. Now, when you look at the histogram, if it's roughly symmetric bell shaped, then that's what you answer, but I don't think this looks like it's symmetric. So if you look at, if you were to draw a curve through data and imagine that you're going down the slide, if you're going from left to right, this is called skewed right. So this is when the right tail is longer. So when the right tail is longer, this is skewed right. And so that's what we're going to select. And let's submit it.